So in April of this year, to exactly zero fanfare or media exposure, there was a fourth OIG alert for cash healthcare in America. What? We've been
Yeah.
talking about three for how many years? There's only three OIG alerts in cash healthcare in America. I've been saying that for like 10 years. And guess what? Now there's four. So that is a really interesting story. It involves so and it doesn't pay all that badly. Remote patient monitoring actually pays more per month than the DPC cap for HSA eligibility.
Mm.
So the DPC eligibility cap is 150 bucks a month. RPM beats it and pays something like $167 a month for the full suite of RPM services. Now, what is the tectonic plate shift? OIG is noticing huge RPM adoption. So they have issued not only a warning at the end of last year that RPM spending had reached up to $300+ million. They just released last week an official advisory warning, and I do mean warning, that there appears to be over $500 million of RPM reimbursement in 2024. And they're concerned about fraud. So
Mm.
they are going to be taking a deeper look at that, and we're going to talk about that in a little more detail. So
This podcast is produced by Concierge Medicine Today, LLC. All rights reserved. Concierge Medicine Today, or CMT, was founded in 2007 and serves as the industry's trade publication and annual medical conference organizer. Please note, the information shared on this podcast and across all CMT platforms is intended for general informational purposes only and may contain errors or omissions. Nothing in this podcast nor across CMT platforms constitutes medical, financial, legal, nor professional advice, and CMT is not liable for any inaccuracies. CMT encourages listeners to conduct their own research and consult trusted advisors before taking any action based on the content presented. No mention, interview, or link should be considered an endorsement. This content is primarily intended for a healthcare audience and may not apply to all listeners. Thanks for tuning in.
Well, good morning or good evening, DocPreneur Nation. You're listening to Concierge Medicine Today's DocPreneur Leadership Podcast. And today we have an old friend and another repeat visitor, Jim Eischen. He's a legal eagle extraordinaire. He understands this space in the concierge medicine, the subscription-based healthcare delivery space. One of the things I love about Jim so much is that he's very open-minded about different ways to approach this space that is truly, gives the physicians, the NPs, the PAs, whatever your specialty is, moving into healthcare, flexibility. And so options, they say money can't buy happiness, but it does buy you options. And I don't know who said that, but it was one of those things. So I'm excited to talk to you about a couple of things that have been in the news over the last couple of a few months this year, as it
yes,
relates to the concierge medicine space. And
yes.
so I'll let you kind of take it from there because it's complicated, but it's also you're going to make it easy for us.
I'm going to try. So thank you, Michael. It's always a pleasure to talk with you. And we've been collaborating for a very long time. We've been in this cash healthcare space for a long time. And, so after a while, I guess you know where the bodies are buried, right? So I found a moment, and I shared this with you, which is why we're talking. I had this moment of realization that there's a lot of change this year happening that relates to cash healthcare. And I really am so grateful, Michael, that you took the time to let us do a quick podcast on this, because I do think these updates are vitally important for all healthcare professionals to understand their options and better understand the new world order, because without us really knowing it or feeling it, because there was very little media reporting, the cash healthcare world really shifted. The tectonic plates moved. We don't have a tidal wave yet, but we had an earthquake or two. And so I want to touch on those. And so let me kind of give you the big one, like the big picture, and then we can dive into each one individually. So I think thing number one is that the Trump big bill passage included an HSA enabling clause for DPC. But that has some restrictions and limitations on it that are really worth digging into. But big picture, those folks have lobbied DC for decades, and I mean decades, trying to get federal law to change to help the DPC model. And they did get a revision to the HSA rules, but I want to dig into more on that because there's some hair on that deal and people just need to know about it. But overall, big win for DPC on that. That's one. Thing number two, Office of Inspector General has been watching RPM, remote patient monitoring, for a couple years now. Well, why do we care about RPM? Well, folks, RPM and CCM, chronic care management, are basically Medicare's pitch to you to do a version of direct care at their cost. So both chronic care management and remote patient monitoring, both of which arose in around 2015, 2016, if you step back and look at it honestly, you say, well, what are they doing? They're giving a doctor or a healthcare professional a monthly fee to be connected to that patient, to check on their health status, and to bring them in when necessary if they're sick. Sounds familiar? So and it doesn't pay all that badly. Remote patient monitoring actually pays more per month than the DPC cap for HSA eligibility. So the DPC eligibility cap is $150 a month. RPM beats it and pays something like $167 a month for the full suite of RPM services. Now, what is the tectonic plate shift? OIG is noticing huge RPM adoption. So they have issued not only a warning at the end of last year that RPM spending had reached up to $300+ million. They just released last week an official advisory warning, and I do mean warning, that there appears to be over $500 million of RPM reimbursement in 2024. And they're concerned about fraud. So they are going to be taking a deeper look at that, and we're going to talk about that in a little more detail. So, thing one and thing two are both good news and maybe not as good news. Good news is HSA eligibility for DPC, yes. Bad news-ish, it's capped at $150 a month, and you can't have any third-party funding, which queried is an employer funding disqualify you. And nothing discussed about HRA or FSA or other qualified tax funds. Okay, OIG, throwing a flag in the air about RPM. What's the good news? The good news is that we have really successfully made the case for capitated, non-reactionary, ongoing reimbursement for direct connection to patients. That's a real win for cash healthcare, and it's a real validation. For that to be at $500 million a year in reimbursement in America is a real accomplishment in terms of establishing that it really does make sense to give people a direct care connection for a transparent, capitated reimbursement to the healthcare professional. So that's amazing news. Not so good is that OIG is really worried about it. Dear OIG, I wish you weren't so worried because this means we're doing better prevention. And so what we're paying in OIG, RPM now should translate into cost savings later. But I'm not sure OIG is thinking that way, and they're really worried. Okay, thing three and final thing. So in April of this year, to exactly zero fanfare or media exposure, there was a fourth OIG alert for cash healthcare in America. What? We've been talking about three for how many years? There's only 3 OIG alerts in cash healthcare in America. I've been saying that for like 10 years. And guess what? Now there's 4. So that is a really interesting story. It involves a cash healthcare model called Greenfield that was doing a very low, reasonably priced, I should say, version of concierge care. And they called it Concierge. And they were essentially selling all of the concierge marketing claims without making reference to routine exams. They said same and next day appointments, extra time with your doctor, care coordination, ease of connection, convenience. Sounds familiar? Okay, that triggered a $850,000 regulatory expense for Greenfield in the form of a roughly $240,000 fine and another 500 and some odd $1,000 of patient disgorgement. This has gotten exactly 0 press. not one press coverage I can find in America. And yet the most typical, common, and replicated version of concierge medicine triggered a cost of $850,000. And so what does this mean? Does this mean OIG cares now? Because for 10 years I've been saying, these are the rules, but I don't know if they care. Well, they care. I guess they care because they did something. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. But those three things, Michael, are all things that have happened this year, all things that have happened in the last few months, and they all really matter and they all bear discussion.
Yeah. Well, and we've been kind of going back and forth, and I like some of the things that we've been kind of talking about because the true market for concierge care is actually a little higher than what people think that it is. It's actually maybe even between 5,000 and 50,000, and that sounds pretty high. It's on both ends, but nonetheless, a low DPC, low fee DPC models typically are selling something very different, and so the pricing really isn't a reflection of the higher touch, the more personal care practice models that are out there where hospitality actually feels more human. But we can touch on that more, but marketing is such a big deal in this space because every doctor you and I know needs more patients. And so they're selling, are they in their
Well,
websites, they're playing copycat where it's, well,
well,
I'll sell this.
well, Michael, not every practice is struggling with patients. So
Hmm.
I'll tell you what I see, and I'm just calling it for what I see, and I don't know everything. I would say that the DPC brand seems to, and I don't know this based on hard data, but anecdotally, there is a struggle with patient adoption. I would
Hmm.
say the integrative functional medicine cash menu model, where they replicate fee for service, but they simply exclude insurance and they do consults and follow-up consults and they have a cash menu. Anecdotally, I can't say I have actuarial data, seems to struggle with patient adoption and sufficient revenue. So that's
Hmm.
something that the integrative fee for service cash menu and DPC seem to share in common. Concierge franchise. So concierge practices that brand themselves concierge and are aligned with a franchise, some sort of consultant or national brand that has, enabled them to do this style of care. Um, I think sometimes struggles with patient adoption and marketing. And I think that the 95 or 6% of the marketplace that aren't those things. Okay. So everybody else, and what do I mean by that? They aren't branded DPC. They aren't aligned with a national franchise or a consultancy that they basically co-practice with. Um, they're not doing fee for service, cash integrative menu care. Um, they're selling availability. They're using the routine exam, essentially safe harbor in 3 federal statutes. And so they're not trying to sell a product, they're selling themselves. They're saying, I'm available to you for a fee. Those practices are full and are hiring because they have too many patients. Now, the interesting question is why? Why is that? And not that I'm trying to be too logical, but I do want to tie it into these 3 events, the 3 tectonic plate shifts, because I think it really matters. And let's just kind of go over that very briefly. So the first thing we mentioned was the big bill and the Trump bill. HSA eligibility really matters. It really matters. There's a reason that the DPC folks tried for over a decade to get that. Why does it matter? Because getting tax advantaged funding for cash healthcare is incredibly helpful for the consumer so that they can have some sort of combination of the transparency of subscription healthcare coupled with a tax break, like they're using pre-tax dollars or they're able to use employer dollars. That has always mattered. Now, listen, executive health has known this for decades. They don't talk a lot about this. You
Hmm.
don't read their playbook easily. But if you look at their playbook, they've been doing that since 1965. And the federal statute told them they were lawful in 1965. They said routine care, routine exams excluded from Medicare coverage. Okay, They've been shaking and baking with that and profitably functioning. And you don't hear of executive health practices lacking patients. That's an
Right.
interesting question. Why? Why? Well, part of it might be this tax enablement, this ability to use pre-tax funds or employer funds. So thing number one, DPC securing HSA eligibility is a big deal because it kind of tells us or reminds us that it really matters when you structure your practice in a way that makes your marketing and patient agreement enable qualified medical expense status. Here's the problem. That lower rung of the economic ladder of cash healthcare doesn't do that very well. Integrative cash menu, nope. DPC, well, they got HSA, so that's a win, but they have a fee cap. They can only charge $150 a month. Bummer. So ironically, for a group of people that are fairly libertarian and fairly on the right side of the column, they bought themselves federal price control for their cash practice model, which personally, as someone who's not over there, but more in the middle, I would never want, never accept, and don't like, and I don't need it. So, and we don't need it. Okay, so that's thing one relevance. Thing two relevance, you know, the RPM explosion of reimbursement just tells you that there are thirsty consumers searching for and wanting to do capitated high connection healthcare. And there are some savvy healthcare professionals in America. They may not be the ones listening to you and I right now, but some other folks are making really good money because they're making about $160 per patient per month. And they may not have a panel of 300. They might have a panel of 3,000. And of that 3,000, they might have 1,000 or more patients who are Medicare eligible, maybe half. So run the math. They're
Yeah.
smoking. Like that's really strong revenue for a very narrow window of services like track data, look at data, call or email patient, the end. That's what you're getting paid for. So thing number two tells us that there are some real economic forces at work showing that there is demand for capitated connection care. And if we just take the time to do it optimally, we can tap into that economy. But I'm not hearing any lack of resource over there, Michael. I mean, come on, the OIG's freaking out. They're saying, whoa, we're paying a lot of money and we're worried about fraud. And then thing number three is notable because this marketing, same and next day appointments, extra time with your doctor, care coordination, access with your doctor. Okay, OIG has been telling us for decades that's not compliant. Okay, they're saying you can't sell extra time or access for cash. You can sell things that are not covered by Medicare, but Medicare does cover communication, generally speaking, depending on the circumstances. And it was that marketing by MDVIP in 1999 to 2002 that, number one, was given a pass by OIG in 2002. They said, yeah, okay, you're selling an annual physical, a follow-up, and some other things in your marketing. We're going to say it's okay. It's okay under Medicare. Great. That's great. But the IRS looked at that and said, yeah, but we don't think that's a qualified medical expense. So Concierge and DPC have for years not been enabled for this tax advantaged HSA, HRA, FSA, MSA funding. And that matters. So conclusions. I think we knew this was coming, Michael. Like we talked about this for a long time. We've been telling people in Atlanta at your conference every year, don't sell time. Don't use stale concierge marketing. Don't ignore HSA eligibility. Actually do what you have to do to get that. It's not that hard. Executive health has always had it for decades. You can do the same thing they do and just put a different brand on it. Call it watermelon, call it grapes, call it longevity, call it lifestyle, call it direct care, call it connected care, call it Dr. Tetra, call it whatever you want. But that formula works exceptionally well in the marketplace. It's not lacking for patients, Michael. They're not worried about marketing. They're not.
From a target audience perspective of a practice that is now trying to take the HSA bill stuff that got done. The
Okay.
audience for me just doesn't line up, because if I'm looking at the data, and there's good data out there about the users of HSAs, they're not spending it on primary care. They're not even fully funded. And so it's not like this overwhelming avalanche or tidal wave of patients. It's half of those patients don't even have aren't even funding them. And then when the ones that are funding them are saving them up for the back surgery, the knee surgery when they get old. And so to convince or persuade or try to sell a patient on, you should use your HSA on this, for primary care services, we just don't see a lot of that. So what's your thoughts and your take on that moving forward?
I love you. I love your question. I tell my clients the words primary care don't exist in the real world. And this is what I mean. Among people who know healthcare, like you certainly know healthcare very well. I've been working in healthcare for over 15 years. So you and I know what internal medicine means. You and I know what a PCP is, or primary care professional. Guess what? No one else does.
Yeah.
So out there in the real world, here's what happens. A person decides what their primary health condition concern is. For some people, it's cardiology. For some people, it's pulmonology. It might be endocrinology. It might be anything. It could be mental health. And so for that consumer, what they're looking for is a high connection care relationship with a professional with expertise in their number one care concern, which is why there are very successful concierge style cardiologists. Even ophthalmologists are doing concierge style practice models. Why? Because there's 300 people whose number one concern is eye health. And maybe it's because of diabetes and eroding eye health based on type 2 diabetes. Okay. So that means that ophthalmologist is their first touch to figure out what's going on. And like I tell all my clients, they don't expect you to treat everything for that subscription. What they want is a person who's an expert in the number one thing they worry about to tell them what to do. So that's where I think healthcare professionals need to sort of realign with the marketplace and realize that it's not that they're looking for primary care or that they're not looking for primary care. I think that the sort of lower cost rung of the ecosystem of cash healthcare, by that I'm, referring to the lower cost DPC models, the lower cost national concierge models. One of the things they might be getting wrong is knowing what their consumer is actually looking for. So their consumer, they are tending to attract people with a non-allocated concern. Because guess what? For a little bit of money, it's not that it's inconsequential. It's consequential money, but you're going to get typically a family practice doctor or maybe an internist. And they're going to basically do what you and I think of as primary care, okay? Which means I don't know what it is and I don't really have a condition. Like I'm generally healthy-ish and I haven't been knocked on my back by a condition yet. But that could happen. And in America,
Yeah.
that's quite likely given our lifestyle and behavioral health issues. So it's only a matter of time that we're going to have a condition we worry about. The young, not so much, although it happens, but it can be cancer, can be dermatology, it can be anything. And then once we have that first touch concern, we probably don't want a internist concierge doctor. Probably don't.
Yeah.
We probably gravitate to someone who is more in the expertise of the system we care about most. And then everything that we worry about is going to run through that frame first. So let's take cardiology. Executive health was cardiology. It was never primary care. They never even worried about it. They just said, yeah, come in anytime you want. We'll check you anytime you want. We'll check you head to toe whenever you want. We'll give you a big head to toe check every year. And then we're going to answer all your questions all year. And if you're sick, come on in. So that's all they said. They didn't say we're not primary care. They didn't say we are primary care. They ignored it. And they've done so quite profitably. And so
Mhm.
I'm telling folks, ignore it. In other words, focus on what's your passion, what's your concern, What do you like to work on? Lifestyle? Are you really good at Marcus Welby diagnosis? Are you the family doctor? Are you someone who wants to dig into Aura Ring and Apple Watch? Are you into lifestyle and nutrition, or do you maybe not even yourself take care of that for you? So you're more about strictly allopathic general care. Doesn't matter. Um, you can do any approach, but it's going to have no connection to the word primary care. It's
Oh,
literally just going to be, what do people give a damn about? Like, for example, look at hormone optimization. So both young and old people have found hormone optimization and said, holy crap, I can feel better and have more energy and engage in better lifestyle health. I'm in. Okay. And so they're finding those practices. And when they sign up for them, that's their first touch. So if I'm a aging guy and my T is down and I'm not exercising enough and I'm getting overwhelmed by life like everyone else, and I decide I'm going to explore testosterone supplementation, and I find a healthcare professional that I connect with, who I connect with, and they're going to take me on that journey, but not just be like a drug pusher, like, not just give me cream or a shot, but like talk about diet and nutrition and, signs of inflammation and how to engage in better lifestyle medicine. Yeah, Michael, that's my first touch. And I will spend my HSA money on that.
so when I think of, and this is more commentary, there's a question in here, but I will let you figure that out. So,
Okay.
um, I'm thinking the professional is the brand, is the bigger topic. In healthcare, the product
Okay.
isn't the fee or the
No.
service list, it's the doctor.
Yeah.
However, old school marketing says if I buy an advertisement, I put something on Facebook, I'm telling you what I mean to you, and it's the practice or the business saying, I matter. Come visit us, come see us, come buy from us. We are trusted. However,
Right.
new school marketing says, and that's really the way of the future. And I think that really builds on the relational side of these practices, which is their main selling point. The relational side says, you are as my doctor very influential, top five most influential voices in my life, more than likely, regardless of your specialty. But you are to me, if I'm going to spread your, joy and your reputation in the community, you've got to give me something worth investing in and buying, worth, you got to give me a feeling that isn't processed, So I don't know. And then I look at the integrative and functional medicine side and I kind of think, okay, was that a wave? And now that wave has kind of moved past us. And now we've got this thing longevity. So marketing is it's a tough one, but it's not just about the price tag. It's like Apple, 95% identity, 5% features, as you kind of alluded to a few days ago. Patients are buying a feeling of trust. They're buying a feeling. They're not buying the
Right.
transaction. And I come back to a doctor's office that I get a good feeling about. There's a book called The Comeback Effect, and I will keep coming back to you, dentist, whatever it might be, because of how you made me feel. And I think that's where so many are like, well, I'm telling you how you should feel in their marketing. So
That's a really
feel
interesting
free to
point.
riff on that. It's
I,
more of a marketing psychology of understanding the behaviors of our buying audience.
I, there's a lot of truth in everything you just said. I'll tell you what I think, or what I think I'm seeing in the marketplace. So, what do I think I'm seeing in the marketplace? So, I think that the product is the healthcare professional. And I think the product is specifically their availability. Now, having said that, you can train patients to have a misguided view of the product. So, if your marketing is touting your price and your services and your features, or if your marketing is touting what your fees cover, like, for example, there's hormone optimizing practices that will bundle um, peptides and supplements and hormone optimizing, and they'll try to create an all-in-one fee. um, there's some practices that market very diagnostic thick versions of concierge style care. And so they really want to tell you about the 3 or 5 or 12 tools in the toolkit. So what you're teaching the patient is that that's the product. So, and they're going to believe you, whatever you tell them. And then your price is teaching them what you think you're worth and what you are worth. And they believe you when you do that too. So when your marketing focuses on your price and your features, what you're teaching the patient is that that's what's of value. What I think is more effective as a long-term revenue stream is when the product is the professional's availability alone, nothing else. That's worth the fee. And then all of the other stuff, like, which diagnostic tools, are you going to do supplements, or are you going to do some other things? Are you going to do some other integrative treatments or not? That's not the product. Those are simply planner out-of-pocket costs. But what you're paying for is me and what I believe in and what I can do for my patients to enhance their health journey. I think that's the superior marketing framing, which is why I tell my clients the first 80% of your webpage should be about you. And I ask them, do you really think there's people trolling the social media and internet, punching in the words, I'm looking for a concierge doctor? Because I think the answer to that question is no, there are not. Here's a more likely scenario. These people are curious about these different kinds of practice models, and they ask around and they get a name. So we're going to pretend you're a Dr. Michael. They hear about this Michael Tetro in Atlanta or Alpharetta, and they're like, that sounds interesting. So when they look up your website, they're not looking for a concierge or DPC or integrative practice. They're looking for Michael Tetro. They got your name. So they punched it in, and whoop, there, hopefully they find your website. So they want to know who you are. They heard about you. And so when you give them this pitch called price, features, program, you're pulling them away from their attention focus. You're annoying them. You're saying, because they're like, well, okay, but I mean, I don't even know yet. How do I know I even want this? I want to know about Michael. So I think when these websites talk about your life story, why'd you become a healthcare professional? What do you believe in? What do you think is missing? What are some of the things you see people doing that are unintentionally harming their health? And how might we fix that? Now you got my attention. And then in the last 20% of the landing page, just tell them how to find you and then have a conversation. So I don't think most people are going to make a decision on a concierge or a DPC or an integrative practice or any kind of brand because they looked on a website and they were searching for concierge or they were searching for DPC. I don't even think they know what those words mean. Not really. They don't. Or executive health too, for that matter.
Yeah.
So what they are looking for is a doctor or an NP or a PA or any healthcare professional because they heard about it. And then they want to know who you are. So tell them. And then I think the best way to do this kind of healthcare is to brand you. Like, you're the product. That's what matters. And let them buy into your availability. And then in a perfect world, or even in a less than perfect world, what can happen is that they buy in. You do some good things for them. Michael helps some people with health challenges that they weren't getting answers to from other sources. And you achieve stability, like you get to a place of mitigation. Your health may not be perfect, but it's not as terrible as it was before. You're not going anywhere because you're going to stay and you're going to want that availability. And so what we do then is reward healthcare professionals for achieving wellness. So when we create this dynamic, what we want to happen is that for them to need you less and to feel healthy and to pay the full free every year. And look, life changes, right? We know this. It's not we all know how the story ends, right? So we all know eventually we're going to have probably some pretty serious health issues, and we're going to come back and need more of Michael. But for now, we're perfectly happy and grateful that we've achieved decent health for now, with ongoing guidance and ongoing radar, ongoing looking for conditions and nipping them in the bud as much as we can. That's valuable. So, but that's when the product is you. That's what you're
Mm,
selling. And then you can benefit from that by having less time drag on you when people get stable and yet they pay full freight. This is what fee for service gets dead wrong. So this is why the cash menu integratives do wonderful medicine and are never properly revenue streamed, because they get people well and then they go away and they don't get
mhm.
paid anything.
Yeah.
So when my product is a consult and I consult you and let's say I'm optimizing your endocrine system and we get to a really good place, okay, the product was the estrogen or the progesterone. The product wasn't you. And you taught me that. And you told me that your time was worth $400. And if I needed you, I'd come see you. But if I don't need you, I'm not seeing you. So I just don't come in. And then you don't get any reward for achieving health. You have to now pay the overhead of getting staff involved to go drag those bodies in and threaten to cut off the supply chain unless you've seen them again.
Mm,
Ick. Okay.
yeah.
That's a terrible business model. Whereas what you want is for people who have bought in to a transparent, stable fee ongoing. And then
Yeah.
their health is great, or at least it's good, good enough for now, for the next few years. That's what we want. And we want you to keep getting paid for your availability. And then when things go wrong, and they will, you're going to be there for them. And see, there's nothing called primary care involved in this. I know it's confusing, but the truth of the matter is those words don't even matter. They don't. Like, am I your
No, I had to
PCP?
learn those things. Like balance, I mean, they say balancing a checkbook. Like it's like that my daughter would say, "Okay, boomer," like we're not taught those things, just like we're
No.
not taught the difference between, well, what's the difference between a family doctor and a primary care doc? And why are we throwing in another term, internist, or internal medicine? Like we don't know these things. And so you have to
Consumers
kind of
don't know them.
now they're going to use Chat GPT to figure it out. And it'll give them it's the new form of Google.
Well, what they're
Um,
really going to do is they're going to go to ChatGPT and go, tell me about Dr. Michael Tetra.
mm,
And then ChatGPT is going to tell them, well, he went to the University of Missouri School of Medicine. He's got a practice located in Georgia, and he's really focused, according to his website, on longevity and lifestyle medicine and enhancing the odds of optimized health. Sounds interesting. Want me to send you to his link? That's what ChatGPT is going to do.
So if we want to broaden the tent, because I think that we do have to widen that tent, because
Yeah.
just primary care or care today delivered just by MDs, NPs, DOs, PAs, and more, if they say this is only, just for the DOs, the MDs, we're shutting the door to, those who can deliver, you know, the message of health and healing and wellness to our communities. And
Yeah.
we talk about this physician shortage like it's a new show pony of data every single year, but yet it's like,
Yeah.
okay, so what are you actually doing, to fix it? And so I do think that the message does need to evolve for all healthcare professionals. But at the same time, um, there's so much resistance to that. And I remember with Dr. McCarthy, she said years ago, not only is it going to take an act of Congress to change how we educate,
Hmm.
our healthcare leaders, it's going to take an act of God. And then you think about, okay, you've got the pandemic, which radically changed a lot in our healthcare place. And now they're kind of like, no, we don't want to keep doing telehealth. Like, I can be on my machine, in two clicks, 5 clicks, and I can download an app and see a doctor. Now, will that doctor follow up and be like, hey, haven't seen you, haven't heard from you in a month? No, probably not. But
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems to me that I as a patient have come to a point where I have accepted how difficult, broken, whatever healthcare is, but I have a view to improvement. And it's very I think about being the last, Canadian on the planet to probably think that concierge medicine is pretty cool, but I also
Oh, that's not
recognize,
true.
right? I also recognize that, okay, in looking at my family and friends up there, I think, wow, you know what? If you don't have a doctor, you can't go see a doctor when you need to all the time, blah, 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 then you're kind of the responsibility is on your shoulders to make better healthcare, make better decisions about what you put in your body, about whether you're going to smoke or all these different types of things. So I don't know. I'm just kind of riffing out there about enlarging the tent, but I also think that doctors are just not good at marketing. They're not taught these things, and they need more executive healthcare coaching. I'm sorry, executive care. That's not right either. Executive coaching, like business coaches,
Well,
you
you
know,
weren't wrong. You
yeah.
weren't wrong, Michael. And I'll explain. Executive health has existed as a subscription cash healthcare model for decades, far before concierge was even thought of as a word. The word concierge was a created word in 1999 to describe Cleveland Clinic's executive health model. So one could argue that Cleveland Clinic and their ilk were so wildly successful in executive health that they didn't even care or bother to care about expanding their tent to serving more consumers. They didn't need to. They didn't need to. They were full at a very comfortable price point, doing exceptionally well in business and doing good healthcare too. And so they didn't, necessity can be often the source of inspiration. They had no necessity. But for us today, healthcare professionals, what we can learn from executive health is that they fell upon the right model. And their model was not based on insurance avoidance. It dates back to 1913. There was no insurance in America until 1929. So when you think of routine exams, this ongoing care model of instead of reacting to illness, engaging the patient all year to advance their health cause with communication and exam services, that was designed to make people live longer, not to avoid insurance. And it wasn't designed as a revenue stream. Believe it or not, it was endorsed by President Taft and Alexander Bell. Did you know that? That in
Mm-mm.
1913, when this first practice in America suggested that routine exam care was the way to do better prevention, no insurance in America, didn't even exist. It was just a good idea for better healthcare outcomes. And corporate America, being clever people, took it. They said, you know what? This will keep our executives alive longer, and it has.
Mhm.
And so it's a privileged, effective model. It's not designed for the masses, which is a shame, but they don't need it to be, so they don't. But that doesn't mean we can't grab their bulletproof car and drive it. They have
Mm.
a bulletproof car. They've got
Yeah.
3 federal statutes that says they're legal under Medicare. They don't worry about Medicare. They're not Optum Greenfield worrying about an $850,000 fine. Never going to happen because they've
Mm.
got 3 federal statutes and decades of guidance that says routine exams and related communications are outside of Medicare coverage and safe for cash. And it also navigates Medicaid and HMO, so which opting out doesn't. So what the hell? There it is. Bulletproof car sitting right there. It gets great gas mileage too. Might as well drive it. That's the way I
And
look at
there's
it.
nothing wrong with driving that. Like, I
No,
think that's where a lot of the altruistic ideals from your training or your education come in of like, well, I'm supposed to be everything for everybody at all times and wear that badge like it's a badge of honor
I'm
and
supposed
make
to
no
die for their
money.
sins. I know.
Yes.
And see, the thing is, here's the thing, Michael, it's bias, okay? And we all have bias. We all have bias. To deny bias is probably bias, so look, there's anti-wealth bias, right? And there's some reasons to have a little bit of anti-wealth bias. And so, I think what happens is the executive health model is viewed from the lens of us for the rich and for the wealthy and the powerful. Well, actually, that's true. But then there's a sense of it's tainted. So it's like, well, what if I do exactly the same thing, except I do it for farming families in Central California? I think that's a good idea. Okay, like in other words, why are we getting caught up with where the idea came from? It didn't come from executive health. They just took it. The original idea wasn't for just rich white folk. It was for everybody. Like, yeah, it became wealthy white men who were running big companies. That's
Mhm.
just a matter of historical fact, which is, by the way, they used to be called men's clinics too.
Mm.
Key man
Wow.
life insurance wasn't a key person life insurance. Key man life insurance was to insure the executive life against the cataclysmic loss of their death.
Mm.
So key man life insurance and executive health or men's clinics were created and grabbed by smart people with money to keep important people alive as long as possible. It works. It's super privileged. Yeah, and you can look at that and be like, ugh. But you can also look at that and go, yeah, but I can drive that car wherever I want. So
Yeah.
if I want to drive that car and lower the fee for people who don't have the money, if I want to drive that car and get a bunch of janitors direct care with a big corporation, guess what? I can do it. It's
Mhm.
totally the road is clear, and there's no price cap. It's not like DPC. I don't have to like fit in that federal price control box of $150 a month. I don't want that. I don't need that. I can charge whatever I want. So if it's a really person of low means, I can do it for free.
Yeah.
If it's a very wealthy person, I can charge them market value. I'm in
When
control
it,
of this.
and for the physicians listening, I'm sure there's these ones already know this, but not every patient in your local community is going to be attracted to your practice, like or your specialty or whatever it is. Like marketing 101 says 80% of your customers are going to be 10 plus or minus years of whatever you are. So if you're 43, 80% of your customers are going to be, if you're the product, are going to be between 33 and 53. And then, then it's a male versus female. Well, do I want to go see, you look at church marketing, for example. The reason that people decide to keep going to that is usually the mom is the healthcare CEO of the family. They're going to decide where the kids and the husband eventually go to church, or I'm sorry, go to healthcare. And then you look at they're also the spiritual CEO of their families too. And then why do good the marketing savvy churches, which sounds a little manipulative, I get it, but from a marketing and demographics target audience perspective, you think of I need to see women smiling and holding open the door. And usually within 10 plus or minus years of what I am, because I see that as the spiritual CEO or healthcare CEO of the family. I see that as, what, she smiled. I think I could be friends with them. And, not to say I wish I hope that all practices will think that way, but I think we have to get over that idea that you are going to, if you have 100 patients that need healthcare in your local community, that all 100 are going to choose you. No,
No,
I only saw it done well once, and it was I think the guy was from Procter and Gamble, and he had started this organization called Patient Bond, and he understood the psychographic segmentations of patients, of healthcare seekers, and he had self-achievers, which represents 23% of the population. They're all about goals and measures, and then you have priority jugglers, which are specific and they want direction, and they only represent 15%. So you're going to be patients are going to be attracted to that specific audience. It takes this 100 people and says, oh, you're right. Like I'm sure you've had this question with your clients and your doctors who it's like, who's your target audience? And unless they're around their colleagues, it's like, oh, I love the moms or the geriatrics, between this age and this age with this specific issue. Usually a physician individually that I'm talking to can tell me exactly who they want to go to. Usually it's never, well, I want to be for everybody. And so you're welcome to talk about that and the need for, more coaching, more business insight, to help these things go. And then we'll kind of come in for a landing on the availability side of things. Where are we at? If we sell availability, are we going to get into a red flag with OIG or Medicare? So I'll let you kind of take the wheel of the ship here.
it's a very interesting series of things you bring up. And what goes through my mind as I listen to you is We can't help but be in the place and time we are. And at this time in our place, we have massive economic disparities. So we have a very small number of people with incredible means and a very substantial number of people who do not have those means. And it triggers lots of emotions, confusions, feelings, thoughts. I mean, you'd be a very unthinking and unfeeling person if you had no reaction to that status, that a small number of people have almost everything and most of us have nothing. So, how do you then translate that into direct care? What to do? What do we do? Now, okay, there's some obvious truisms here. Number one, smart, wealthy people see the value of this immediately, like, okay, and they would pay 4 times what you're charging, is the truth. You undercharging means they will not buy your product because it looks like a Walmart backpack and they shop for their backpack at Louis Vuitton or maybe Patagonia. It's not a bad thing. In other words, maybe you don't want them. But just understand that when you price yourself at the low end of the market, your most likely consumer is going to take a hard pass. So that's just the truth. Okay, that's truth. Number two, truth. I'm going to go the other way and say healthcare professionals have their own sense of privilege. And one of healthcare professionals' privileges is that they are rarely exposed to much out of network or out of pocket cost because they normally have connections, friends, colleagues. They get healthcare questions answered. They get seen by a colleague or a friend or a referral from a friend, and they give each other really good treatment. And I don't say that as a criticism. That's not a criticism whatsoever. But I think one of the negative aspects of that is they don't understand what other people go through. So for the vast majority of Americans, all of the following is true. They don't have an extra $500 to spend on unexpected expenses a year or in a given year. Okay. That's about 50% of the country. 100 million Americans are in medical debt. That's a third of the country, which means their economic prosperity is hampered because they have unpaid medical bills. And they have unpaid medical bills because the way our healthcare insurance system works, there are massive gaps in coverage and often unpredictable and non-transparent out-of-pocket costs. And see, for the healthcare professionals going into the space, Michael, they feel very guilty about their fees. And I understand that. They are generally not in the 1% that I speak of. So they don't understand that there's people who could put a $40,000 a year charge on their Amex. That doesn't make sense to them because they don't know those people. They don't go to dinner. Like they don't hang out. They don't go to service together. They don't take their kids to the same football game. So they don't even know that exists and they can't fathom it. But similarly, they also don't understand that when they price themselves at whatever they price themselves, they think it's kind of horrifically expensive. But there may be people of very limited means carrying a $5,000 or $8,000 debt because with no concierge medicine whatsoever, just running into an urgent care or having a couple conditions needing a couple things that weren't in the coverage packet or didn't make the deductible, they could be facing thousands of dollars of fees. And see, these healthcare professionals don't face those fees. I don't think they do. So they don't even know it exists. It doesn't even make sense to them. Let me give you a real life example. So I tried as an experiment One Medical because it's a very low cost, right? It's like $100, $150. And then Amazon bought them. And so now Amazon Health is touting One Medical for essentially the cost of Amazon Prime, $100, $150 a year, which is very low fee, right? So you're thinking, wow, low fee, this is amazing. So I had 2 primary care visits that were of very low complexity. We talked about a potential condition, but it was like, I don't know if this is even here or not. May not be anything to worry about. And then something came up in some blood work that I did. And so just to be super safe, again, no alarms going off, I got sent to a specialist just to take a look at it. Specialist talked to me for 15 minutes and said, Jim, you have nothing to worry about. Okay, so 3 visits, Michael. Each visit was about 10 to 15 minutes. 2 were with an internal medicine doctor, and 1 was with a specialist. What do you think my out-of-pocket cost was?
Uh, well, for the internal medicines, I assume it was covered by the One Medical subscription for
They're
the.
in network with my plan. So I have a high deductible PPO. I'll just say Anthem, and I run it through my law office, and they are in network. So the One Medical PCP is in network with my plan, and the specialist was in network with my plan.
Wow. Uh,
15, 15, 15, or like 2 in person, 1 virtual.
I'm
All,
gonna For the specialist, that one would be either free or would be very expensive. I'm gonna say 900 for that one, and I'll say 300 for the other 2 per.
yeah. So the out of pocket for all 3 is over $1,500.
Wow.
Now, in California, we have a law that says you are not allowed, if you are in network with a patient, you cannot charge the patient in excess of the reimbursement schedule you've reached with that plan. So what I should have been billed is what those 3 visits would have been coded for under the plan reimbursement with Anthem. And then I should have had those as out of pocket because I hadn't met my deductible. Those should have not totaled more than $300.
Hmm.
Okay. But what consumers face in this US climate is everyone's thirsty. And so, when medical isn't doing very well financially, so they're pretty aggressively billing well beyond the negotiated rates of their plan contracts.
Yeah.
And consumers don't know enough to say anything about it. So they just become in debt for $1,500 or $2,000. And so, when you talk about like $2,000 or $3,000, like for example, if I had 3 more of those visits, I'm at $3,000.
Yeah.
But you have healthcare professionals who go, gosh, I think $3,000 is really expensive for my subscription. But
Hmm.
see, if I was in that $3,000 subscription model, if that was the doctor handling all this, my out-of-pocket cost would be 0,
Yeah.
because we wouldn't really be billing plans for any of this. We would just run it as part of the subscription practice. So my point in
Yeah.
all this is to say a lot of the healthcare professional guilt is a combination of misguided awareness of what's actually happening in the marketplace and what the actual costs are, and a little bit of the privilege of not having to worry themselves on how to solve these problems. So they don't get this right. They don't
Yeah.
they don't see that what they think might be an unreasonable fee might be the cheapest option for an ordinary American for their basic primary care.
I was recently at the big hospital here in Atlanta, and I was with my father-in-law going preparing. We went through all the 4 different levels of places we had to go during that morning visit. Took about half a day, and uh, I remember having the conversation with him. I just pay the bill. I pay the bill, and I noticed the way he was treated by the staff and the doctor by paying his bill. He's like, I don't know if it's right or not. I assume, and then, but you pay your bill, you get treated a different way. You don't pay your bill and you argue about the fees all the time. You're going to get some resistance. It's going to be, well, maybe, like it or not, and I even had the same experience with my son just recently. It was like, okay, you have allowed charges and bill charges. And because we work in healthcare, you and I know things, and we're like, okay, I'll cross-reference these 2 once. No, I don't want to pay the full allowed amount, right now. Like that's not okay. No, we don't do that. It was like, okay, so I'm going to have to chase after my money after I look at the EOP and the EOB. And then I need to look at every single code with every
Right.
single tooth and write a strongly worded letter that, hey, I've been a part of your practice for 20 years. You owe me, I don't want a credit, and I don't want a credit associated with that particular patient. nor do I want, I want to check. And so we shouldn't, as patients, have to chase down this information, chase down our own money. Because once you pay a doctor's office, it never, like, I remember talking with the lady at the hospital. She's like, "Oh, we send out like clockwork every 30 days. We send out the refunds." And I was like, "Oh, you're the one, like Good Will Hunting. You're the one that read my book, You're the one that pays the refunds." And it just seems, again, patients don't know these things. They don't know to cross reference that they're owed money back.
They
And
are. They can
so,
be. And Michael, the problem is, as Americans, we don't understand our healthcare system. We may very much deeply love our country and love its roots and values and the way we see it, may be heroic, but the true story of American healthcare is not a heroic story. It's a story of lost opportunity. It's a story of depressed economic prosperity. It's not a story of growing a middle class or, helping people come up, the economic ladder. We're holding people down the economic ladder with the way we do healthcare. And I'm not here to say that direct care is the solution to everything. Okay. I mean, I think that's irrational.
and I
But my
think it's
point,
important to clarify, you're not using direct care as that term. I like to call it personal care. I even like your high connected,
high
patient.
connection
It's
care,
different than DPC.
yeah,
Your
it's
your
not.
version that you're describing, direct care, that's different than DPC and it's different for concierge
It
medicine.
is.
Just clarifying for the folks listening.
Yeah, no, no, no. Like I call it direct care because yeah, I think of it as direct care, but in my mind, direct care is that bulletproof car. And I'm going to drive that car because I got 3 federal statutes, decades of guidance, and I have full qualified expense eligibility with no federal price control. Yeah, count
Like
me in.
slash executive health. Yeah.
Count me in. Yeah, it
Mhm.
is. But I'm going to call it whatever I want. I'm going to call it Marcus
Hey,
Welby.
I,
I'm going
re-
to
I
call it internal
remember
medicine.
I remember a doctor that she's since passed away, and she said, they don't call me that. They don't call me concierge doctor. They don't call me this. They just call me by my first name. And
Yeah.
she's like, I still work 20 hours a day. I just spend my time a lot differently, and I work,
Jim, just call it
I'm happy
Jim.
with it. So,
Yeah. So I do think, like, getting back to what your point was originally, you know, the money and the value proposition all gets very confused. But I see healthcare professionals as in the trench at Gallipoli, not even aware of what the name of the war is or who's fighting who. They just see the carnage. So those guys and gals are seeing economic and physical healthcare disasters. It wears on them. They see the system not addressing the full range of need. It frustrates them. They see the pitfalls of insurance that burns them out and causes them moral injury. And then they come to this point where they're asking, is there a better way? And the answer is yes, there is a better way. Um, the overall system needs to be very substantially reformed. But I'm going to come back to where we started, which is there are some very positive signs. Okay. So the DPC movement for a long time lobbied DC for HSA eligibility, and they finally got it. And I think that that's a great victory for them. I am sorry that they're restricted to $150 a month. It's not acceptable to me. I'm also sorry that they can't accept third-party funding. That's also not acceptable to me. So I'm afraid those folks are going to still have to run under the radar for employer funding and sort of take their audit lottery chance with HSA, because that's what that is. I don't know if they're going to get I'm sorry, HRA or FSA. I don't know if the big bill got that for them. But it does show you that if you work long and hard enough politically, you can implement change, and they deserve credit for that. We know that $500 million a year are getting paid for capitated connected care by Medicare. I don't think we're getting that memo. And
mhm.
OIG is telling you, hey, there's a lot of practices that are billing. They're getting $167 per patient per month to track a health data metric and connect with the patient once a month and go, hey, how you doing? That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of money is being left on the table. if you're so biased against insurance, you're so damaged by it that you can't possibly connect with it again. All right, they're giving you more than your bill gave you. Okay, like
Mhm.
seriously, for just that little range of care, and then you get to do whatever you want with everything else. So in the bulletproof car, we can charge 5 to 50 grand for routine exams, and we can still bill RPM, and it's not a compliance risk. It's
Mm.
actually effective. No out of pocket, no copay, transparent, stable fee to the doctor or healthcare professional, no cost to the patient for that care connection. Touchdown. No wonder it's at $500 million a year. That's not going to change, but don't cheat. And then with the marketing, it's become crystal clear. Don't use the stale old concierge style marketing. You can't sell access for cash. It's not Medicare legal. And the answer is not opting out of Medicare. Okay. Like that's not the right answer. The right answer is to just drive the bulletproof car, you know,
Yeah.
take advantage of all those decades of privilege. And honestly, it came from a non-privileged idea of just, hey, this is just better preventative care. So it's not a trick. It's not a Jim's clever idea. No, it's a version of care that doctors invented because they thought it was a better way to manage patients, and they were right. And then in the
Yeah.
1920s, occupational health experts looked at it and said, gosh, I think this could keep workers alive better. And it did. Okay.
Mhm.
No lawyers in the room, no cleverness, and not an insurance plan in sight. It was just simply to keep people alive better.
I think
And,
sorry, go ahead.
and I'm just going to say, and then wealthy, smart corporations grabbed it and said, mine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna make this mine. But it could be yours too.
Well, I think what I've gleaned as if I'm a physician sitting here listening is I need to make my marketing about me. And I need
Yeah,
to say like I mean, not in a promotional advertorial like I went to this and I got this. It's more of you got to put some feeling and emotion into it because we are
yeah,
emotional beings and
we
we
are.
are as patients, as customers, sitting standing in an aisle of Target and we're saying things to ourselves that if any salesperson said to us, we would be like, never going back to that store again. Like, you know what? You
Yeah,
deserve that new toothbrush. You deserve that new pair of jeans. Like you would look really, don't get those ones. Like you make your marketing emotional.
yeah,
And so one of the things I think that is would help physicians, and you work with them, so tell us, like if I'm looking at the website and I'm looking at my marketing, my brochures, these types of things. Okay, I'm going to make it more about me, but not in an advertorial, more emotional. Um, you know, I should probably run that language through my service language, especially through a legal filter. Like does this make the sniff test? And they
I'll
can
make it
contest.
real easy for you, Michael. I'm going to stop you right there. There are 3 federal statutes that say that routine exams, checkups, and physicals are not covered by Medicare. There are 3 decades or more, actually 5 decades, 5.5 decades of Medicare guidance saying that routine exams, routine physicals, routine checkups are not covered by Medicare. So it's like I tell doctors and healthcare professionals, do you worry about doing Botox and then also billing insurance for care? No. I go, this is the same thing. So when you look at Medicare's list of non-covered services, it's aesthetics, routine exams. It's the same list. So stop unreasonably worrying about Medicare regulatory compliance. It's so simple. So sure, like Michael, I get your point. People should modify their marketing, make it more about them, explain the why. Simon Sinek theory of Apple marketing, like what's the why? Not the how, but the why. And then, yeah, don't be afraid of the words routine exams. I feel like healthcare professionals think that those words don't make any sense. And I'm like, that that's over 100 years old, right? Like that it's baked into the executive health model that makes millions of dollars a year all over the world from wealthy, smart, high IQ people, and they know damn well what that is and they want it. So why are we so afraid of just marketing routine diagnostic exams and related communications? Now, communications connected to a non-covered service are non-covered. That's it. That's all there is to this, Michael. It's not rocket science.
And
It's,
availability is what you're saying too from
well,
earlier.
okay, but got to be careful there because that availability is covered.
Mm-hmm.
So your marketing needs to be smart. You need to say that you service a small panel of very smart patients investing in their health using diagnostic, ongoing, annual, and follow-up routine exams and related communication support in order to achieve improved health outcomes.
Yeah.
And that because I have a smaller panel, I can see you quickly. Because we are connected in this routine exam model, we're going to communicate seamlessly and fast without a lot of impediments. Because I don't depend on insurance for reimbursement, although I might bill a little bit, like I might be billing RPM,
Yeah.
and I might be making a pretty nice, tidy sum from Medicare on RPM at no risk to myself. Why not? Track data, call a month, bring them in when needed. You know, that's it.
Yeah.
That's all there is to this. It's
Yeah.
not like to say that you need a lawyer to do this. It's kind of funny to me because there's literally no legal risk when you follow the statutes and guidance. It's just doing it right, or it's just like seeing it for what it is. It's like, oh, that's what they're saying. That's what they mean. So that's all it is. That's all there is to it. It's just routine exams and related communications. Smaller patient panel means I'm going to see you quickly. Because we're connected in this high connection exam model, we're going to seamlessly communicate all year. And because I'm not dependent on insurance, doesn't mean I'm out of insurance, but because I'm not dependent on insurance plan restrictions on time and scope don't matter to me. I don't follow them. I just want to make you healthy. So I'm not watching the clock. I'm not tracking to see if this will qualify for E&M4. I'm just trying to make you healthy, which is why I recommend these practices very rarely bill insurance. Bill 1 every 10 interactions, not 9 out of 10. Because if you're selling an insurance product, it's not as valuable.
Yeah.
Because now we're back to One Medical's outrageous illegal surcharge billing and unpredictable, non-transparent, out-of-pocket expenses impeding my desire to connect with you. We're just back to insurance healthcare with an added access cost. That's not a good way to do this. The right way to do this is to sell ongoing routine exams, treat people, diagnose them, make them better for your fees. All of that can be routine exams. They ask you, are you in insurance? Here's what they want to hear you say. Yes, I am in network and I'm in Medicare. No, you didn't waste your tax dollars. No, you're not wasting your insurance premiums. So you're going to need your insurance for other medical conditions, maybe beyond what I do. So you need your insurance. But here's the deal. I'm not going to very frequently use your insurance. I'll only use it when I think it's of great benefit to you and I think it's the right move. And if it is the right move, I'll use it. Otherwise, we're not going to touch it.
Well, this is a solving the world problem question of healthcare, but that is kind of getting back to the idea of the big tent. And there's not enough doctors to go around, and if there were, they got too many patients already, and they're not going to be doing a model like this. And it's one of those things that's like, okay, marry the mission, date the model. Like you can always adjust and change. Marry the mission, date the model.
Yeah.
Where do you want how do we get positions? Because what I see happening too is you see these associations, the lobbying organizations saying, okay, well, PAs and MPs, you guys can do all of this like we do, but we're going to stand in your way. Or,
A little bit. Yeah.
right? And it's like, well,
Well,
you're not primary care, you're not like us, you didn't get the training, blah, blah, blah. But
blah,
at
blah,
the
blah.
same time, patients don't know primary care. They don't know the difference between a PA and an MD or a DO.
Not really. They have an idea, but it's a pretty primitive idea. There is a substantial difference. Don't get me wrong. But you're asking me, where do I think we're going? Okay, here's what's going to work and here's what's not going to work. Okay, here's what's not going to work. I don't look, I love Roe, I love Hims, I love a lot of these companies that combine telehealth with a product. They're trying to tackle US healthcare in the form of selling more stuff to Americans. So it's like, I'm going to sell you on hair loss, or I'm going to sell you on hormones, or I'm going to sell you on ED, and I'm going to do product sale enabling telehealth, and I'm going to sell you a product. I just don't think we're going to spend our way to better healthcare in America. I think the problem is the cost. Like we're spending twice as much as any other developed country with the worst developed country public health of any developed country. So we are clearly getting it wrong, and we have to admit that. We can't be in denial. Denial's not just a river. As much as we love our country, we have to just say we're flunking. Okay, we just got to be real honest here. We flunked this class. This is an F, because we're not saving money and we're not saving lives. We're wasting money and we're killing people. So that's an F, in my opinion. So now, where do we go from there? That's a really, really, really good question. I'm going to tell you what I think is going to happen, and then I'm going to tell you what I think should happen. So what's going to happen? What's going to happen is that these other healthcare professionals are going to start subscription practices too. They're going to just look around and go, well, God, insurance kind of sucks. I don't want to be on the treadmill. I don't want to see 36 people a day. I don't want to have no life. I don't want to miss my kid's soccer game. I don't want to like fill out paperwork until midnight every night. That's a shitty life. And I'm not even getting the MD respect. So advanced pharmacy and PA and NP and honest to God, chiros and acupuncture and you name it are all going to create subscription models. And guess what? The market's going to be as strong for them as it is for you, because the consumer's not going to differentiate. Their market's going to be 5 to 52, and they're going to do it. So that's just going to keep happening. Now, I think in 1 to 2 years, and I don't know what this administration will do or not do, and I don't know who the next administration will be. Very hard to predict all of that. But at some point, the federal system is going to wake up and go, holy shit, we don't have enough providers. And then they're going to look for culprits. Okay. Now, in a wonderful world, they'd blame themselves for their own healthcare system. They would all look in the mirror and they'd look around each other in that white dome and go, we did this. We took too much insurance dollars. We got bought off. We got bought off by our more powerful and wealthy constituents. We bought into this system, and we've effed ourselves over. And we've killed a lot of Americans. We've made a lot of Americans go broke. So number one cause of bankruptcy in America is medical debt. Okay, that's not going to happen. Okay, here's what's actually going to happen. They're going to want to blame healthcare professionals. They're going to say, oh, it's not our fault. It's not the system. Where are all the healthcare professionals? And so guess what? They're going to use AI, and they're going to hunt down, guess who? The opted out professionals. They're not going to hunt for the opted in professionals, because like, why would they care about that? Like, they're already in the network. So when they hit that panic button, they are going to unfairly, in my opinion, and unwisely, in my opinion, target opt-outs. And then they're going to do some random surveys and audits. And they're going to ask questions like, well, did you sign up a patient with an immediate medical condition? Did you do urgent or emergent care for cash? Did you use that mandatory addendum on your patient agreement? And in my opinion, 90% of the opt-outs are going to violate 1, 2, or 3, or all of those. They're going to have done one of those. They're going to have signed up a really sick person. They're going to have charged cash for coming to your farm and stitching you up, and they're going to, and they're really good people, by the way. I don't think this is like a good thing. And they're going to get massacred, because the penalties for violating opt-out and for violating Medicare assignment as an opt-out are absolutely horrific. They're terrible. And it can even lead to debarment, which is in essence the end of your medical career. This is the risk you're taking when you opt out. And I don't think they see this. They get told like, oh, just opt out. It's safer. A lawyer not doing their job who wants to defensively lawyer is saying, well, you could opt out and then you don't have to worry about Medicare assignment. How lazy and how terrible, because I think in 2 to 3 years, they're going to have a target on their backs and they're not going to pass the audit because
Yeah.
they will have signed up a sick patient. They will have done urgent or emergent care for cash. Those are Medicare assignment violations. And these guys will enforce it. If you bleed in front of them long enough, the shark's going to bite. So, that's what's going to happen, Michael, is that there's going to be upheaval and then they're going to force everyone back into the system. Is that going to fix the problem? No,
No.
not even close. It's not even
Yeah.
close to the problem. Now you're going to ask me, how do we really solve the problem? And I'm going to tell you what I think the answer is. So I think the problem is when you look at a mission, you look at a company, a good company. I'm a capitalist, okay? Like, I'm not a bomb throwing anarchist. I'm not a communist. I'm not, you know, I'm a capitalist, I do business. So when you look at a business organization, it's top down. You have to look at the mission first. The mission determines the corporate culture. The mission determines how you make small decisions. It's just like the military does this brilliantly. When you train the military, you train them in an overall mission. You tell them, what is it to be an American military soldier or sailor or pilot or whatever your role is? You buy in to the mission, and then you're an army of one. So if you're behind lines, you're gonna fulfill that mission, even if you're by yourself. The mission determines. America's healthcare mission is way off. Our mission cannot be to make insurance companies trillions of dollars. That's stupid. Okay. But that's what we're doing. Okay. So we need to snap out of it right now and go, this is anti-prosperity. This is anti-capitalism. This is like antitrust. This is destroying the country's economic viability. It's destroying my profession to dedicate the healthcare system to enabling for-profit healthcare reimbursement. It doesn't work. Okay.
Yeah.
Like we've given it a long time, Michael. We've
Yeah.
given it a really long run. And if it was going to work, we'd have been either one of two things. Either we wouldn't be in debt and we wouldn't be twice as expensive as the rest of the world, but we'd just be killing a lot of poor people. Okay, that's a moral problem, and we'd have to deal with that. But we don't even have the benefit of that. We're going broke with this misaligned mission. So I think the mission of healthcare should be to keep people alive and healthy as long as possible.
Yeah.
Why don't we just start there?
Yeah.
Why don't we start with the notion that to be an American is not simply to be defended by foreign enemies or domestic with all means necessary to preserve our life, liberty, and property, but that maybe life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness has to include my damn health. And that maybe even if you don't think that's a good idea from, maybe you think people ought to pull themselves up by the bootstraps, this is breaking our economy. So this is bad capitalism. So be a capitalist, roll with the dollar sign and change the system. Okay. Like that's what I would say. And if you want to know the best way to do it, you just got to look around the world and see, well, what are all the other countries doing right that we're doing wrong? Why are we the only one doing it this way? You go not for profit and you go national. It's an insurance policy. That's it. There's only two factors. It's either for profit or not for profit. It's either national or territorial. I see no advantage to the territorial scope of insurance. What's the point? Why can't California underwrite Alabama? We do with our tax dollars, right? So why can't California's wealth also underwrite the health of Mississippi or Kentucky? Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a Californian. I'm saying it. We sent $86 billion out of our state in excess funding relative to what we get from our tax federal, contribution.
Yeah.
But why are we doing this just for military or prison system or police? Like, why can't we do it for healthcare? So I would just say, like, use states like New York and California and Illinois and Florida and Texas, you know, large population states, and create an underwriting that's more sensible. It's just good business.
Yeah.
You know, I don't sell Apple products state by state. I don't buy my Tennessee iPhone. Smart business doesn't do things like this. They
Yeah.
don't. So why can't we be like smart business in healthcare and just scale and deliver based on a workable mission? And
Yeah.
so that's, I'm going to tell you that's the answer. And I don't know if America's going to hear it. And, you know, we all have our own biases and we all think we know what we know. And I could be wrong, but that's the way I see it, Michael. I'm just saying it's bad business to
No.
to underwrite state by state is bad business. To underwrite and make it a for-profit model misaligns the mission. So instead of thinking about how to make a profit, I think we should be thinking about how to keep Americans alive.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be cheaper.
Yeah.
It'd
Oh
be a
yeah.
lot cheaper. And you know what? We can take what we've learned from our experiments. We can do it better than other countries. For example,
Yeah.
we can build in the routine exam model into such a system, and we can actually try to keep people alive as long and healthy as possible. And we can have capitated revenue streams to pay healthcare professionals for availability and for caring and
Yeah.
for just keeping them alive. Like, I don't mean to make it sound so simple, but what if it was that simple?
Yeah. Well, sometimes simple is good. And I think that I was listening to I think it was the Black Rifle Coffee Company CEO. He was doing an interview and he's like, look, there's two types of people, mission first and me first.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's no doubt that most doctors that we bump into are mission first. But then we always run into the me first too. And I get it as a patient, you know, we are me. Patients are selfish too. Patients want me first because they're in pain. You know, we, we want what we want.
Our greatest challenge in this country, Michael, is that we cut a deal with at formation, and we have been fighting that deal ever since. And that deal is to accommodate different states and different states' attitudes towards certain behaviors or practices. And so
Mm,
this country was formed with a prenup called the Constitution. And it kind of gave a little bit of grace to certain states, despite their lack of population, to say, okay, we're not going to make you not do that thing. We're going to let you do it. And then we end up having a big war about this thing. Okay. And if you fast forward to 2025, we're still in the same mess in which
mm,
we cannot implement a federal solution to a critical nationwide problem because we cannot achieve political consensus. And we can't achieve political consensus because we're essentially not functioning as a pure democracy. You know,
yeah.
we made that deal though in 1776. We said it wasn't going to be strictly popular vote. So what it means is the US has a very limited set of tools in its toolkit to try to solve very significant national problems. Healthcare is problem one in my book, but our
Mm,
political system is not enabling consensus. It's actually defeating consensus. So we can't agree. Even if a slight majority of the country knows a better way, we can't get there.
yeah.
We can't get
Yeah.
there. And then smart politicians will use these tools to elect themselves to our detriment. And we end up getting divided with divisive messaging because it's tapping into that fundamental core misalignment of the US governmental system, which allowed certain states with less population to do a certain thing
Yeah.
that the more populated states didn't care to do. So here we
Which
are.
yeah,
Here we
which brings
are.
us full circle
Here
to
we are.
yeah, which brings us full circle to the idea of, you know, as patients, frustrated as you might get with us, we have an acceptance, like a frog in a pot. You know, we have an acceptance that healthcare is not great, and we have a view to improvement. And you are, as if you're a physician or an MP or whatever, wherever you
Right,
might land, you have a view to improvement, and we don't know that view about you. Like, share with us what your mission is for us, and
right.
that's what I will buy into, because 5 words from you weigh 1,000 pounds. As my doctor, you're probably one of the top 5 most influential voices in my life,
Oh.
behind wife and kids. But it's, like, you've got to share with me that, and I texted the doctor last week. I was like, hey, my whole left leg went numb, like
God,
shockingly quick. And I was like, it kind of went away pretty quick, but I don't know if this is anything. So I took my blood pressure and,
scary.
hey, save me. But it was like within, I was like, okay, I think I can drive to work. And so I did. And it was like, should I be driving to work or should I be driving to the hospital? And so it was one of those things. But again, he saved me probably a couple $1,000 of,
Oh,
and a half a day. So
probably.
there's, there's a lot of things that we unpacked here today. So Jim Eishen has been our guest with Eishen Law Office. You can go to eishenlawoffice.com. He also has some slides or a couple of decks
Yeah,
that we'll put, as well as the links to the OIG HHS report. We'll
yeah.
put some of the things that were discussed into the show notes below. And anything on the slide deck you wanted to talk about, we'll put that in the link in the
I
show
just want to
notes.
emphasize the slide deck does talk about the fourth OIG alert. The slide deck does make a mention of the 500 million in RPM reimbursement in 2014. And the slide deck does talk about the DPC political victory with HSA funding, but with some limitation in the form of that $150 a month cap and no third party funding. So I note all that in the slide deck, and I try to give you in the slide deck sort of a big picture of what I think works best. And look, I'm as frustrated as you might be with our system. But here's what I do know. There's something we can do right now that works. So let's just do what we know works now, and then move on down the road.
Yeah.
There's if there's no solution, that's not a problem, right? So I definitely can't figure out how to make America do healthcare better systemically. I don't have that power of persuasion, but I can certainly help a healthcare professional do a superior version of healthcare that was thought up over 100 years ago that ended up keeping VIP executives alive and longer and better, and is protected by law and enabled by tax statute, and
Yeah.
gives you the flexibility to do whatever you want and to help you
Awesome.
do what you want to do. That's the key. Let's put these people on their mission and let them figure out how to do healthcare better, because who knows what they'll think of,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, for sure.
it could make the world a better place.
Some of them are amazing entrepreneurs, and they knew their knowledge gap, and
Yeah,
they went and filled it,
yeah,
and
yeah.
it wasn't all from just the insights of their peers. It was from
No.
businesses. It was from ideas that they had. Well,
Well,
our
those
guest is,
1913 doctors, Michael, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and look at who endorsed them. William
Hmm.
Taft and Alexander Graham Bell.
It's a big
So,
deal.
so you know what? It's 2025 and it'll be 2026 soon. And I'm looking for someone listening to this podcast to think of an even better idea.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
I
who
think
knows?
oh goodness, it was somebody has already thought of something uniquely better. Like what we've talked about today, there's already a version of uniquely better out there.
Yeah,
And that, like, our vision and mission should always be, how can I make it better? Like
right,
what can I do right now to make this, because they're already trying to figure out a way to make what they do compete with what you do, to make
right,
it more unique and more better. And I love
right.
that perspective, but that's a business perspective. Not healthcare providers just don't think that way. Well, our
Well,
guest has been Jim Eishen of Eishen Law Office. You can go to eishenlawoffice.com to learn more, connect with Jim. We'll put the links in the show notes and contact information as well. Thank you, Jim, for being our guest and clarifying, the muddy waters of all of this. It's not easy, but we appreciate what you do. And again, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Michael.